Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, I have a guest replacing Laura for the evening. We're going to talk potential Habs coaching changes, and we have so many questions in the Friday mailbag, and that's all coming up next.
For Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 634 of Locked On Canadiens. As always, thank you for making us your first listen, your first watch, your first download, whatever it may be here at on Locked On Podcast. We're free and available wherever you get your shows and on YouTube if you are watching our wonderful faces right now. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Matla, and I am not joined by the active stick Laura Sabat tonight. We gave her the night off to do her own thing. She had another show that she was a part of that was going to run long, and I said, you know what? Nope, I got this covered. What could possibly happen on Thursday? I'm going to invite our good friend Ian Boisvert of the Build podcast at Maybe It's Ian on Twitter. And Ian, of course, because the Canadiens this week just decided all news all the time. How are we feeling today?
Well, it's funny. I think, with the way that the new Canadiens are releasing news, we got, to 8 o'clock this morning and there wasn't an official news blast. Like there wasn't, that regular 8 a.m. that we're going to have to get used to moving forward. Instead of the normal, like I think what we had gotten used to was like the 5:30, 6 o'clock at night on a non-game day news blast. So it's nice to have stuff to talk about. That certainly helps.
Yes, and this kind of goes hand in hand with what Martin St. Louis, after he signed his new contract, not even a contract extension, I guess, a few weeks ago, he mentioned that he was comfortable keeping his coaching staff in place. So Trevor Letowski, Alex Burrows, and Luke Richardson would all be returning this upcoming season. Hit today, and this came from Frank Saravalli. This was not a news blast from the Canadiens. That would be very weird if this came from the Canadiens. Luke Richardson is at the forefront of the Chicago Blackhawks coaching vacancy. And my first thought was, I feel bad for Luke Richardson in that because Chicago's going to be a disaster. I also think it's good for the Canadiens, but I also can't fully shake the feeling that I don't know what the replacement is. And I don't know if the devil you do know is better than the devil you don't. And I'm trying to weigh my Luke Richardson feelings because the regular season, the penalty kill has not been great. The defensive structure has not been great. And then I look at what they did in the playoffs the last 2 years when he was on the bench in playoffs 2020, 2021, where defensively, and yes, Carey Price helps, they were very good at what they did. And the penalty kill was incredible. I don't know where the disconnect is here. It's not all Shea Weber. That's for sure. I don't know. I'm leaning towards if they want to offer Luke Richardson the job, I say you let him take it at that point.
Yeah, I think, when you get to a situation where the team is asking for permission to interview your guy and you've granted it, you've sort of opened that door that, if they do make an offer, it seems like he's going to go to Chicago. I'm sort of with you on the whole, the defensive results haven't really been there, in larger sample sizes for Luke Richardson. I still think he's got a proven track record as a leader behind that bench. When Claude Julien went out during when that was Kirk Muller who took over in that instance. When Dom Ducharme had to stay home because he had COVID, Richardson sort of stepped in and he's a stoic guy back there. Like you're not going to stay much that's going to make him get flustered or frustrated. I think he's a guy that I think the Chicago Blackhawks are probably targeting because he is a calming influence and sort of not very flashy character. I think Chicago needs some stability right now, both on and off the ice. I think that Luke Richardson can be that guy. I'm also really happy for the guy. I mean, results aside, right? Like we can talk about the results of the team, and I think a lot of his job has been made increasingly difficult by the fact that the defense was built for this team to play hockey in 1985. That's not much that Luke Richardson can deal with. So, he goes to a different situation in Chicago. Maybe he's not in charge of the defense there. He's just sort of the head coach. He makes lineup decisions, but he's not a tactician when it comes to how to play defense. But generally speaking, I like Luke Richardson, the guy. I think I sort of said this when Martin St. Louis said that he didn't really want to move out any of his coaches. I don't know how any one of them can feel safe. I mean, the power play's been just as bad as the defense has been for a very long time.
Yeah, I kind of look at this as this is a new opportunity basically for the Canadiens. Is that I don't know who they're going to replace him with. I don't think they're going to dip into the Rockets coaching staff right now. They might. I'm trying to think of actually who is coaching the defense there, and I don't know off the top of my head, which proves I'm the worst Rocket full-time reporter they have. But it's an opportunity, and it's a chance to continue this change in that I think Luke Richardson has done a lot of very admirable things with this team. And this is not a like Michel Therrien and JJ Daigneault and all those guys where it's like, get the hell out. I will pack your bags and take you to Trudeau myself. This is it is kind of a shame because I think Luke Richardson is a very kind-hearted guy. All the work he does for charity, for his daughter and everything it's important. And I like seeing the Canadians support that. And the guys clearly respect him. And I think he would have the utmost respect of everyone on the bench in Chicago too, because he seems very down to earth, but also very no nonsense. But for the betterment of the Canadians going forward and continuing to modernize their team a little bit, it seems easiest just to kind of let him go. And I think it'll sting a little bit. That's, a big presence in the room there. Obviously, Martin St. Louis is still learning the reins there. Luckily, there's 7 million coaching vacancies out there right now and 7 million coaches that are out there. I'm wondering if the pull of Martin St. Louis and all these first-round picks, if there's a coach that had an unsuccessful run or was, kind of fired unceremoniously going, but what if I associate coach, like Kirk Muller did when he was here in Montreal? And I wonder if you have a mentor for Martin St. Louis and you get another prominent voice on the bench there. I'm very curious to see where this goes. And my biggest thing is I'm glad we are not the Flyers, who have decided John Tortorella was worth a second-round interview, or the Dallas Stars, who apparently Pete DeBoer is their leading candidate.
Yeah,
I don't get it on either of those fronts. Pete DeBoer is going to turn the Stars into a powerhouse for 2 years, and the wheels are going to fall off, and we're going to do this whole cycle again. So to shift gears a little bit, we have a ton, and I mean a ton, like giant cartoony $ bandit bag ton of questions to get to, and that's all going to be coming up in our next segment. But first, today's show is brought to you by betonline.net, who is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. If you go check out their website, you're going to get all the latest odds, props, lines, and everything from the NHL Stanley Cup Finals to the NBA Finals, baseball, NFL futures, MMA, UFC, whatever you are looking for, BetOnline has you covered. And they do esports, live betting, all that, all in one place. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so if we're going to dive right into this, we're going to start with our questions that came from YouTube comments, which if you ever want to send us questions, at @LO_Canadians on Twitter, lockdowncanadians@gmail.com in the YouTube comments. Carrier pigeon, I don't know. If you send a carrier pigeon, I will be shocked because I don't give my address out to anybody here. So we're going to jump right into the YouTube questions. This one comes from Gregory Debu, and I'm really hoping I'm pronouncing that right. Quick question for you guys. Who is the most overrated prospect in the Habs system and the most underrated prospect?
This is more your area of expertise than mine. I think we hear a lot about goalie. but I think it's for good reason. I mean, he was a first-round draft pick. Like that's not nothing. Underrated. I feel like people are kind of underselling Norlinder just because we haven't really seen him. I think the upside for him is quite high. If it pans out, that's a big if, especially in Montreal, especially defenseman. It's a big if. So, I mean, those are my two guys. But I think the truth for all of them sort of stands somewhere in the middle, as with any prospect evaluation, really.
I'm gonna catch crap for this, and I don't mean to, but if I'm going with overrated, I look at someone like Arbor Jacki, who I think has a nasty physical edge to his game, has kind of blossomed a little bit offensively, but he's playing as an overager on a stacked team right now. And that's, guess what? That's what he should be doing. And for underrated, I think a lot of people, Norlinder is a good one, and I think that's a very good one. I think a lot of people are somehow still kind of sleeping on Sean Farrell as a prospect. I know that he went to the Olympics and he played the World Championships. He's someone that I've really liked since the minute I wrote his draft profile. And I think he's going to be a real big piece of this lineup here. And I don't hear him mentioned a lot in terms of people who might be closer to the NHL than they think. He's a little bit older. He lost a year of NCAA time because of the pandemic, but I look at this and I go, he's going to be good. I think he's got talent to do a lot here. This one actually comes from a DM on Twitter from Eric Blay for the Friday Mailbag. Hey, LOC crew. My question is regarding Joshua Watt and the rules contracts are transferring between CHL junior leagues. Are players allowed to transfer between the OHL 1 year and choose to play in the WHL another year? So theoretically, could they send Joshua Watt back down next year after 9 games and let him go to a WHL team, for instance, saying, okay, you dominated the Q. We want you to go to the WHL to work on your defensive game. And that's an interesting question because I know that you can transfer leagues, but I don't believe that you can. There's some weird red tape around this that I wish I had a more definitive answer, but I think it's a fascinating idea because I'm imagining like soccer transfers where it's like Joshua Watt is going from Sherbrooke to Moose Jaw in exchange for cash and this prospect going back the other way. And the other thing is, could they loan him to the SHL or something to get closer to NHL quality of competition? They'd have to find a team willing to take on a prospect like that, especially in European leagues, which now are a lot more populated with homegrown players. But I don't know. I think it'd be fun to see it like an interleague loan system, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that red tape that's there is you get when you're drafted into the CHL, you're drafted into a certain league in the CHL. It's not like a big CHL draft. The Q has its own draft. The OHL has its own draft. So that's where it becomes difficult, I think, to transfer guys between those leagues. But I will say I am kind of, just generally speaking, pleased by the idea that fans are understanding that these guys aren't going to be ready as soon as they're eligible to come up. Like, I think that's something that's got to be undone in like the psyche of the last decade, that if guys don't make the NHL immediately, they're busts, right? Like the progress of a prospect doesn't have to be linear. And it doesn't always follow the same sort of generic path. Like you can have an Arturi Lehkonen who spends all the time over in Europe and then just shows up at training camp 1 year and goes, I'm an NHL player now, there's nothing you can do about it. So great question. I'm the same way. I think it would be kind of neat to see that interleague loan system play out.
This one comes from Patrick Lafleche. Lafleche. I'm very sorry if I'm mispronouncing these. Please don't tweet mean things at me. Who are the wingers that the Habs trade this offseason? It seems that they already have too many of them. And I don't want to answer for Ian, but I think we both know what our answer would be, is that they need to trade Mike Hoffman immediately. But I can't help but think Yoel Armia is on his way out at some point this offseason.
Yeah, those were both my answers. And I think Yoel Armia is definitely going to be on the move. But I think with Hoffman your other year at least, just to see if he can recoup some kind of value, because there was not at the end of the season, unfortunately. Even as guys got better under, he really didn't. So maybe you keep him around, see if he can fluff those numbers with power play goals. But yeah, I think those are the two prime suspects. The rest, I think, are generally either here to stay because they like him or here to stay because the contracts are too onerous.
From John Paul Murray, Scott, without looking at Jersey's roster or cap situation or knowing exactly what immediate help means, how might Gallagher, Petrie, and Anderson for second overall sound? And my first thought is that's a lot, and that's taking a lot out of this Canadiens lineup in terms of leadership and like veterans in the locker room. It's three guys who I think are pretty well liked overall here, and if you take them out, it makes New Jersey very, very good getting that kind of lineup together. But I don't think if you're the Canadiens, you do that unless your plan is to be absolute dog water for at least the next 2 years and land Connor Bedard as well.
Yeah, and I think when we look at trades, a lot of times we're just looking at entries on a cap frame, not as living, breathing people involved in the fabric of a dresser. Like, that's a lot to remove. And we've seen what can go wrong when that happens, and was the exact counter art for trading half of your team's leadership. So yeah, you get second overall, but I don't really think there's much of a chance Montreal has to get that unless they're trading the first to move down.
This one comes from Sebastian Leclerc. For the mailbag, there's some comparisons to be made between Gorton's 2019 Rangers team where the summer he acquired Jacob Trouba via trade and landed Artemi Panarin in free agency. Similar to the Rangers at the time, the Habs have young players to build around. Does he go after Forsberg and find a veteran D-man in the trade market this summer, or does he wait one more season to make the big splashes? And my thought is I'd be shocked if the Canadiens land any big-name free agent this offseason just based on the way things are going. But I do think they're going to land somebody just because I think the appeal of Martin St. Louis is just too strong for some of these guys right now, especially with the first overall pick coming in too.
Yeah, I understand the desire to draw that comparison to what Gordon was doing in New York, but you also have to remember that he was the general manager there. He's in a different role here. He's essentially, you have to think of him as like our Brendan Shanahan in the sense that he's very much involved in these, the decisions around the direction in which this team is going to go. I doubt he's telling Kent Hughes in his first offseason as general manager that he has to go out and sign a massive free agent. I don't see that being part of the reality for this team this season. Next season, I think, might be a coin flip. We really have to see how this one plays out and see where some of the young guys come along, and maybe they fill some holes where you don't really think you need to add something of that capacity.
And our last question from YouTube comes from Connor Kenny. If Price does end up playing next year and not going on LTIR, are the Habs going to trade Jake Allen for picks and cap space?
I thought the time to do that was this year. Honestly, like I thought that it made a lot of sense. There were a lot of teams that needed goalies and one team that just made it to the conference final who absolutely needed a goalie, who, whether the price on Jake Allen was just too high or the Canadiens weren't really willing to him. Again, it all comes back to that question, right? Is Price going to be okay? Which is more of, it's a problem for this team than I think they'd like to admit. It's $10 million that they don't know how they're going to allocate, and it's a goaltending position that they struggled at last year that they have to try to figure out this year. So, they have to figure something out, whether it's Jake Allen starting or it's Carey Price starting. But I don't think you can. I think you got to insulate Primeau from that situation, but that's a different argument entirely.
My thought on this before we go into our final segment was if Price is here, Allen is here too, because they know Jake Allen is a very good squire to Carey Price. And I think that's important. If Price is gone or can't play, it's going to get interesting from there. That's when I think Allen gets traded. They find someone in the market. sign them cheaply and go from there for right now. But if Carey's good to go, they're going to give him, the 1B to help him out. And it is by far probably the most interesting storyline outside of the draft if you're in Montreal this year. So we have so many more questions. These all came from our Twitter listeners and enemies and such, and that's all coming up in just one moment. All right, so we are back, and before we get into the next thing, I do have a favor to ask. If you go to lockedonpodcast.com/surveys, take a survey, let us know what you like about Locked On Podcast, what we can do better. Please fill it out. It doesn't take long, and it really helps us to help you put together a better show every single day when we sit down to record. And you'll be entered to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. So that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Just going to jump right into these. Randy Hansen asks, what draft viewing party is favored by the Locked On crew? And I have to be honest, I don't know. I was discussing this with Laura because the draft starts on Thursday night, in which then we have to put out a show for all of you afterwards. So I will be doing that for my Airbnb and then figuring it out from there. It will be a good time. If you see us hang out, don't be weird. Be respectful, and we're happy to say hi and chat for a little bit, but don't be weird. Please don't be weird. That's my thing. This one comes from DF Pendries, who has been underperforming on the Rocket, and I assume this means for the playoffs. Ian, I don't know how much of the Rocket you've actually watched so far in the playoff run.
A fair portion of it. I know I'm 2 of this series. I saw games 1 and 3, so I guess I'll take the heat for them losing both of those games. I mean, the defense looked like it really struggled in the last game. Schoenemann was not looking all that great. He did end up scoring, but there wasn't really much they were doing to stop the cycle of Springfield. I think they're relying a lot on rush opportunities. They're not really getting a ton, from cycling, just like Springfield does. So I guess you could say that there's a lot of forwards who aren't exactly pulling their weight. But with that said, there are still a lot of bright spots on that roster. Like Gignac's been fantastic. He's just been, every time I watch him, he's doing something like borderline spectacular. So I don't really know if there's a way you can pin these losses on any one person, so to speak.
And that's the thing is, I don't think I'm pinning it on any one person. I think that they have been, Schoenemann has been underwhelming considering how good he was in the NHL and what I know he can do at the AHL level here. And I look at someone like Jean-Sebastien D, who has been good, but needs to find another gear because they need some offense. And he's the guy they're going to rely on for that. I don't think anyone's been bad.
Yeah.
By any means. The officials have been terrible. That's really been about it. But I wouldn't say anyone on the team's been bad. It's a lot of scoring by committee. So some guys just kind of ebb and flow through things here. And I think this is part of it.
Yeah.
Second question, how favorable would a Kulak contract have to be for it to make sense to bring him back?
I mean, what was he making when they dealt him? Like $1 million bucks? Like it couldn't have been anything a lot more than that. I can't imagine he's going to break the bank. On a good day, he's a middle pairing defenseman. On a rough day, he's your 5 or 6, and he's a good 5 or 6. So I think anything under $2 million, and you're kind of cool with that.
He got paid 1.85 over for 3 years. So he has 3-year, $5.5 million, so 1.85 per season on that.
Oh, wow.
Is an insane steal for Brett Kulak. And if you give him a slight raise, like
it is a steal for him, but I was even still surprised to see him get that. He's got a good agent.
I was going to say, I'm surprised he got 3 years, to be honest.
Yeah,
that's the part that shocks me, is because I thought they're going to just 1 year along him until he's gone. So
yeah.
One last question. Isn't Beth from the Happy Hour, who asks questions here every week, great?
Yeah, Beth is wonderful. Hi, Beth.
We have a bunch of questions from Jeff the Red here, so I'm going to start right down here. How do you think the Oilers would have done this postseason with someone like Jake Allen or just league average goaltending? Not just against Colorado, but would their series of Calgary been shorter, do you think? And my first thought is, yes, they'd probably be cup favorites if they had literally anybody who was not Mike Smith starting and playing well for them.
Which is insane because, like, statistically, he was like a 920 going into that final game, I think. But every game, it just seems like he gives 2 goals. Like, he's getting peppered with shots every night. And then he makes all the really, really tough saves. And then Rasmus Anderson scores on a wrist shot from his own blue line. Like, it's insane to me.
Mike Smith is a goalie I don't get because, like you said, there are times when he's just lights out, but the minute it goes against him, just throw it all out the window. He's done. When Mike Smith is done, you know that he's done. And he doesn't dial it back in. He just gets angrier and starts doing dumber things. From Randy Hansen, having day 2 tickets for rounds 2 through 7 is normal, right? And as someone who did that at the draft here in Buffalo, yes, bring a mobile charger if you can get one in there because you're going to go through it, especially if the Wi-Fi is struggling. Enjoy some Bell Center hot dogs, hang out with some people, enjoy the draft. It's a good time. If he's available, do you tender an offer to Dylan Strome?
That'd be an offer sheet, right?
I don't know because I don't believe Chicago's going to qualify him was the rumor.
Oh, interesting. Well, if it's an offer sheet, my answer is no. I think we got to be done with those. Like, I'm over that. I don't want any more of that smoke.
Yeah, if he's not getting qualified, he's someone I would look at then because I know he has flaws, but he's an NHL caliber player, and I don't understand what Chicago's doing here with this. Like, then again, I don't want to know. I hope Chicago's hockey team continues to struggle for an eternity because that's exactly what they deserve, if not worse. So I would. It all depends on what that qualifying offer comes in at and if the Canadiens can make it work around other things.
Yeah.
From Jeff the Red, what will you eat if the Rocket win the Calder Cup? And I assume this is directed at me. I don't eat things that are weird to like celebrate happy occasions in hockey. I usually eat gross things when I lost a bet or we hit subscriber goals because y'all love that kind of content. But I'm going to say fried chicken cheeseburger.
Well, Scott, there's, a lot of yours are gross Mountain Dew themed. There are rumors that there's a pickle flavor coming out. Maybe that's what you could.
No.
That's a no from you?
No. No to pickle flavored Mountain Dew.
You heard Absolutely it here, folks. 3,000 subscribers and he'll drink the Pickle Mountain Dew.
Why would you guesting on my show and just throwing me under the bus like this?
I'll drink it with you.
Oh, God. I already have to do the Hot Ones challenge because Patrice Bergeron isn't coming to Montreal, so that's going to be terrible. Based on what you know about draft prospects, is there an off-the-board pick you can see the Habs making in rounds 2 or later? And yes, and I'm going to quote Matt Drake on this, Jordan Dumais, who played for the Halifax Mooseheads, did not get invited to the Combine, is rated anywhere from early 3rd to like 4th roundish. And I think with the numbers he put up, if I'm the Canadiens, I'm looking at that and going, that's my guy. And I think that's their off-the-board pick for this draft. Admittedly, I haven't looked deep beyond first round writing profiles and stuff right now just because a lot of stuff going on, man. This is why we have Tony Ferrari and Scouching and other people coming on because they know more than I do about everybody. Speaking of bets from a previous question, hi, I remember to ask a question this week. Do you think a current player or Marty, Kent, or Jeff will announce the first overall pick?
I bet Kent Hughes announces it. It's his first pick as the general manager. I bet they give that to him. If they were going to do something goofy, it would be the second first that they have.
My thought is they're going to have Jeff Molson address everybody because obviously it's at the Bell Center. It was supposed to be there, 2 years ago or a year ago, whatever.
Yeah.
He'll announce, we're proud to welcome you in English and French. I will not attempt to speak French because I do not have the je ne sais quoi to pull that off. And then he will introduce Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton. Hughes will franglais his way through this pick like Trevor Timmons always did. Selectionné, and they will pick Shane Wright. And then I think the second first-round pick, they might have someone like Nick Suzuki or whomever do that, I think. If they have a player do that, whatever player they have is wearing the C next season.
Yeah.
That's I think going to be the hint there. Another one from Jeff the Red. What role do you see Chris Wideman settling into next season?
A bottom pairing guy, maybe middle in a pinch, but bottom pairing guy. He'll play power play. He'll be one of the defensemen, I think, that hits the ice in 3-on-3. But other than that, I mean, it was a good signing for Montreal, but I mean, everyone was like, I think there was sort of like a backlash after, like, why do we care so much about the Chris Wideman signing? Well, because it's neat. It's neat that we have that piece that can sort of be a leader in the room and do other stuff.
I look at Weidman too, and I go, you're the ideal like sixth defenseman. You can move the puck. You're fine enough in your own zone that it's not like Marc-Andre Bergeron levels of bad.
Yeah.
And he can play the power play, and he makes the coward Mark Scheifele fill his diaper when he's on the ice. So, like, and surprisingly, he seems to be extremely well liked. Laura and I talked about this after he re-signed. It feels like he's matured since the Uber incident, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but I think as a guy who plays power play, if he puts up 20 points as your third pairing defenseman, like, what are you going to do? He's there to hold a place until the prospect sees it. And then he becomes the seventh defenseman and rotates in. Not the end of the world.
No.
Has Cayden Primeau's playoff performance earned him another opportunity to be the backup and get starts in the NHL if Carey Price can't go? I don't know.
I'm very much keep him in the minors until you are absolutely certain that he is ready to go.
I think he will see plenty more games this season. The Canadiens, I think Kevin Poulin will be back for the Rocket next year, but they learned very quickly this year they need goaltending up because they traded Michael McNiven and everything went to hell after that. Yeah. So I'd look for them to sign some CHL or NCAA free agent goalies or something this offseason to kind of help fill that void if, God forbid, anything goes wrong. I do think he's going to see more NHL action than normal this year. And one more from Randy Hansen. Are these fair comparisons for style of play? Shane Wright is John Tavares, Yaroslakovsky is Dinas Zubris, and Logan Cooley is Mike Modano. I don't fully know because, one, I didn't really get to see Zubris and Modano really play a ton in their prime. And I know I don't like player comps. I like Shane Wright is Shane Wright, Logan Cooley is Logan Cooley. Simon Nemetz is Simon Nemetz. I like to let players be themselves because when you attach a label to them that they are this guy, the expectation becomes that they are going to be that guy always. And it's a tough thing to live up to.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a huge guy on player comps, especially when Cole Caulfield was drafted in the States on the broadcast. His player comp was Lionel Messi. Like they just threw that one away. Like it was like, If watching a player reminds you of a certain player, cool. I'm glad you found that and you got to remember a guy along with us.
All right. I have one last question. This is coming from me. I need you to rank your top 3 Pokemon before we go.
Top 3 Pokemon? I always liked Poliwhirl. I don't know why. So he's a solid 3. I've discovered later in life that if I was a gym leader, I would be a bug gym leader. So I'm gonna go. I'll probably go Venonat in second, and then Charizard's in first because that's who you pick when you start the game naturally. Although I am doing a run right now where I pick Squirtle just to change it up. But
I always bounce between this whether or not we're including legendaries or not. I always have Snorlax in my top 3. I love Snorlax unabashedly. And then if we're including legendaries, I've always had Ho-Oh. I've always had a soft spot for Ho-Oh in my thing here. If not him, playing the later generations, I've come to really, really love Garbodor because he starts out as a literal bag of trash. And when I did my Sword and Shield playthrough, I named him Corey Perry as a term of endearment. And then Gengar. I always loved Gengar and always like that. So I guess if you're listening or watching this, drop your top 3 favorite Pokemon. We will discuss this at a later date, or Ian and I will talk about it on Twitter. We won't roast you. That would be rude. You can follow Ian at Maybe It's Ian on Twitter. Subscribe to The Build. That is his podcast as he talks about the Canadiens' continued efforts in their rebuild and the path forward. You can follow us at LO_Canadiens on Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube. We hit 1,000 subscribers, which means we make that YouTube money now. So thank you very much for that. You can follow Laura at The Active Stick and myself at Scott Matla. We have a lot coming up for you next week, and we will see you all next time.